So here at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, we're known for not only having one of the largest giraffe herds in the country, but also for the incredible care that we provide. Over the years, we've had 202 giraffe born at our zoo, which is, I think, one of the records. We actually just had a giraffe born here a couple weeks ago, a little baby girl who is thriving. But we've been able to build on the incredible animal care and training that our care team here can provide to really help advance the great care that we can provide to giraffe here as well as around the country and around the world. So this here is Mahali. He's one of the older neutered males that we have in our herd. And he's been one of the first giraffe that actually started to train for voluntary foot care. Some years ago, we were realizing we were having a lot of lameness issues, a lot of animals that were limping. And when we started to investigate, we realized that there was a lot of hoof overgrowth, which you would expect. You know, any hooved animal, a horse, a cow, a giraffe, they have hooves that are just like fingernails, and they grow throughout their lives. And so if they don't wear down enough, then it changes how the animal stands, and that can lead to things like arthritis. So Mahali is a super smart giraffe and very, very trainable. And he was one of the first to start to voluntarily put his foot up on a hoof block and let us discover what was going on in the feet and start to manage things. And so that's really revolutionized where we could go with our care program. Since that time, 8.5 years ago, we've been able to train our entire giraffe herd to voluntarily participate in voluntary hoof trims and x-rays. And with that, we've been able to bring a whole new level of care to these animals without having to usually anesthetize them. And that's just been an incredible joy, and it's brought us so much closer to these beautiful animals. And he's actually the first giraffe that we know of that ever got stem cell therapy. So what we were able to do was we were able to build on the fact that some of our giraffe were so well versed in the foot care training that we could take it to the next level. We were able to do things like voluntary blood draw training. So with that, we were able to do things like start a blood bank for giraffe, which has actually helped save newborn giraffe around the country. We've partnered with a number of zoos to help make that possible. But we were also able to just take some blood that was collected from a giraffe that was in perfect health, and then with Colorado State University, we were able to grow stem cells based on modified equine techniques. And Mashama was really, really clinically lame at the time and had all sorts of soft tissue as well as bony health problems to his feet. And so we were able to do a procedure where we not only trimmed his hoof overgrowth, but we gave him stem cell therapy. And we can't say whether the stem cell therapy or the combination of treatments resulted in an improvement in his case, but he is still with us, and that's many years later, and we're super proud of the care that we were able to provide. Here is an example of a giraffe foot from our herd, and you can appreciate here they have 2 toes on their feet, unlike a horse, which only has 1, so it's more like a cow's foot, and you can see that this claw is very long and this claw is much shorter. This is actually what the foot should be grown to, and when you aren't able to trim their feet, whether it's with training or under anesthesia, you end up getting a huge amount of overgrowth. So on cross-section, we have all sorts of pathologies that can develop. This is all overgrowth. Here's arthritis. There's actually even osteoporosis and a fracture in this foot. And then as one of our management techniques, with the Equine Lameness Prevention Organization, we've been able to develop all sorts of new strategies, including giraffe glue-on shoes. So Mahali was one of the giraffe that actually had a shoe that was custom made to him that we glued to the underside of his foot, and it helped relieve some of the discomfort that he was initially having, and was part of kind of our more proactive management that we were able to bring to his case. Based on the things that we've learned, we started to realize that there was a bigger need around the community of zoos, but also around the world, to talk more about how to provide great care for these animals. And so starting 5 years ago, we started hosting a workshop to bring together giraffe care professionals from around the country and ultimately Europe, Asia as well, and even Africa, to help advance what we could do for these animals and share the knowledge that we were getting. In addition to being able to talk more about the incredible ways that we could train animals to voluntarily participate in their health care, we are also able to take more of a look at what's going on for their conservation status in the wild. So as we started to pay more attention to what was going on with health issues in zoo giraffe and finding ways to advance their medical care and do more proactively with the animals training, so that we could give them long, healthy lives, we started to realize that there was kind of a silent crisis happening in the wild. While giraffe are very common to see in zoos, they actually are going away in the wild. It's a bit of a silent extinction, and we're finding that giraffe are already locally extinct in 7 countries in Africa, and there's only about 110,000 of them left in the wild. Increasingly, those are small, fragmented populations and really vulnerable populations. And it's just something that hadn't been discussed and hadn't been tracked until really very recently. And so as we started to learn more, we started to engage with some really great partners around the world who were starting to do something to help save this incredible species. And so we've been working with organizations like Giraffe Conservation Foundation, who's based all over Africa, as well as the Uganda Wildlife Authority and other AZA accredited zoos, to really try to bring new energy and resources to the front lines of conservation where it's really needed. And one of the most critically endangered populations of giraffe is actually in Uganda, where there's the Nubian giraffe. And almost all of that population, almost all that subspecies of giraffe, actually lives in one national park called Murchison Falls National Park. And that park is an absolute beautiful place, an oasis of biodiversity, but also it was recently discovered to have oil. And Uganda is an incredibly beautiful country, but they lack a lot of the infrastructure that we take for granted here. Things like some of the paved roads and the things that make our lives so much easier. And so oil mining has been approved to happen within this national park. And it's putting really an incredibly important population of endangered giraffe at risk. And so along with Uganda Wildlife Authority, Giraffe Conservation Foundation, and other organizations, starting in 2016, we've been supporting and sometimes traveling over to Africa to help with these giraffe conservation efforts. So what has been happening is, instead of having all your eggs in one basket, basically almost the entire species in one national park, some of these young individuals are actually being captured over in Africa, in Uganda, and then transported sometimes across the Nile River by barge, sometimes across the country, to restore them back into historic habitats where they lived 20, 30 years ago but haven't been found for a long time. And so I think it's a real opportunity to connect with the story of how our giraffe are here, and they're so amazing and so worth saving, and then what's happening over in Africa, where literally there's some people standing on the front lines ensuring that these animals have a future. And it's not easy. It's not easy to move a giraffe across the Nile River on a barge, but it's work that has to be done. And I'm really proud that our zoo is part of that story and part of making such incredibly important conservation work happen. And increasingly we're seeing that zoos are part of that front line of conservation. In the end, there's a saying, you'll only love what you understand, you'll only understand what you're taught. And I think seeing these animals firsthand helps you realize how important these animals are to save. And every visit to our zoo is actually a direct way to help with conservation stories like this. Every guest that comes to our zoo gets 75 cents in tokens that they can put to different conservation projects like giraffe conservation. And so our zoo single-handedly has been able to bring more than $3 million to the front lines of conservation in the last, I believe, 12 years, just with that gate admission. And increasingly, I think zoos are an important part of making that link, connecting with people such that we can save species like the giraffe.